What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I am coming at you guys today with another Archetype video. This time, we'll be taking a look at NecroValley. Yes, we're going to be visiting ancient Egypt and those who worship. Oh, well, not worship, but those who watch over ancient Egypt's tombs. Yes, we have the Gravekeepers. So you're going to get a nice chunk of ancient Egyptian history and a lot of good tie-ins between the original Yu-Gi-Oh series and Yu-Gi-Oh GX series. For the Gravekeepers have been notably stand in both of those series. The Gravekeepers themselves, for some history lesson, they are all spellcaster type monsters who are based off of the ancient Egyptian tomb keepers. Many of their members, of course, are dark attribute, with the exception of a few who happen to be Earth. The Gravekeepers overall revolve themselves around their field spell, NecroValley, which allows its which allows its the field itself to basically say there's no interactions with the graveyard. Things in the graveyard cannot move, and things in the graveyard definitely are going to stay in the graveyard and do nothing in the graveyard. For NecroValley itself has that ability to negate any effects that would move cards or from the graveyard or have effects within it. The Gravekeeper cards themselves honestly started in spell rulers with a particular card itself, known as Gravekeeper Servant. It was until Pharaonic Guardian where the Gravekeeper archetype itself flourished. The Gravekeepers were featured in many of other Yu-Gi-Oh sets, such as Force of the Breaker, Absolute Power Force, New Ruler, both extra packs for volumes 3 and 4, Legacy Duelist Legacy Volume 1, both Legendary Collections 3 and 4, Legacy of the Valiant, and even Soul Fusion. Their archetypal gimmick, besides being an archetype that deals with negating the graveyard, they also have the archetype gimmick of having their effects not be negated by their field spell, NecroValley, which is one of the rare occasions where any archetype has ever had their field had a difficulty of using their abilities because of their field spell. So it was just another niche to just say, okay, well, we'll make sure that nothing happens to them. Ironically enough, many of the Gravekeeper monsters do take inspirations as well from a couple of the Yu-Gi-Oh main staples in the Yu-Gi-Oh series, which we got to know as the Ishtar um, clan. And the Ishtar family overall has some abrupt monsters that do look like them, which we'll get into, as well as a couple of other favorites within Yu-Gi-Oh. So, why don't we go ahead and we take advantage of this time and we take a look at all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! All of the Gravekeeper monsters. And we'll start off with Gravekeeper's Vassal. Any battle damage this card inflicts to your opponent is treated as effect damage instead. Gravekeeper's Vassal is known in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for being a very abrupt card during the beginning um, portion of Duel Links, where this card and a lot of other cards circling around it uh, built into a deck that where this card became its win condition. I do believe later on, as Duel Links improved, they did create a Forbidden Limited list, and this was one of the many monsters that hit that Forbidden Limited list, as well as certain other cards to keep this card from being aggressive. How aggressive was this card, you may ask? Well, there's a card called Secret Behind the Dark Door, and it allowed any low static monster to be able to attack your opponent directly. Because this monster's effect is to treat its battle damage as effect damage, you could use a combination of cards to increase this monster's attack strength so that during the battle phase it would be the only monster attacking and do a massive amount of damage to your opponent. Now, we move over to Gravekeeper's Curse, known in the LCG as Gravekeeper's Shaman. If this card is summoned, you can inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. This monster was one of the few monsters in the Gravekeeper archetype to actually make its appearance in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, where Jaden Yuki battled the Gravekeeper's chief in a duel to find one of the shadow charms. Only to note that the shadow charm itself was broken into two pieces. One was still held by the Gravekeepers, the other was held by Atticus Rhodes, who was still under the Gravekeepers, who was under the control of the Shadow Riders. and the two were never supposed to meet in order to keep balance itself together. Gravekeeper's Spear Soldier. If this card attacks a defense position monster, and it can inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder. If this you contribute one Gravekeeper monster, except Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder, inflict 700 points of damage to your opponent. Gravekeeper's Guard. Flip. Target one monster your opponent controls. Return that target to the hand. Gravekeeper's Watcher. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell, trap, or a monster effect that would make them discard. When it resolves, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Gravekeeper's Spy. Flips. Special summon one Gravekeeper monster with 15 or less attack from your deck to your hand. There's also another monster who was featured in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime as Gravekeeper's Spy. I believe was also simply Gravekeeper's Assailant, and that in corresponded, it was spying on Jaden and his friends. Gravekeeper's Chief, known in the OCG as. Oh, no, this is the Gravekeeper's Chief. My bad. There is no translation for this one. So, Gravekeeper's Chief. You can control only one face up. Gravekeeper's Chief. You can. Your graveyard is unaffected by NecroValley. When this card is tribute summoned, you can target one Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard and says summon that target. Of course, Gravekeeper's Chief and many other Gravekeeper monsters would higher up in the clan will be holding that miraculous staff in their hands. Seeing as that means that they are more important in the group than others. Gravekeeper Chief, of course, was the duelist that Jaden battled in the anime. Alongside the next monster, Gravekeeper's Assailant, known in the OCG as Gravekeeper's Assassin. When this card declares an attack while NecroValley is on the field, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and change that target's battle position. This monster also has a familiar look to itself, as there's another monster associated with this card, known as Knight Assailant, who is in the OCG known as Knight Assassin. The similarities between those two cards, of course, is that their entire makeup. That Knight Assailant looks like Gravekeeper's Assailant. It's actually a funny fact because they're both the same person. There is no real more association with them except for how they look. They share the same weapon. They share the obtuse background of ancient hieroglyphics, and I even think, if I'm not mistaken, the attack and defense are not the attack is not the same, but the defensive points of Knight Assailant are only three times of what Gravekeeper Assailants would be. Just for some added information on Knight Assailant, it's a level 3 dark attributed uh flip fiend type monster. In its effect reads, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target. When this card is sent from the hand to the graveyard, target one flip monster in your graveyard, except this card, and return it to hand. So, moving on back to the Gravekeepers, we have Gravekeepers Commandants. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, add one NecroValley from your deck to your hand. This is one of the many cards that came in Force of the Breaker to include its field spell searcher. Fun fact, this monster does have, of course, the artworks of the field spell NecroValley in its artwork. Next up, Gravekeeper's Descendant. You can tribute one other face-up Gravekeeper monster you control, target one of your opponent's cards they control, and destroy that target. This monster does have similarities to Gravekeeper's Oracle, as Oracle himself is the older version of Gravekeeper's Descendant. Next up is Gravekeeper's Priestess. While this card is on the field, while there is no field spell card, face-up field card, the field is treated as NecroValley. All Gravekeeper monsters on the field gain 200 attack and defense. She is the one in many of the promo. Actually, she's the first of the promo cards that were ever received for the Gravekeepers. As in the TCG, she was the sneak peek card for Absolute Power Force. She also carries a similar design and look inspired by Miss Ishizu Ishtar from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Original Series. Her outfit and setup is similar to what Ishizu wore in the Duelist in the Battle City Finals. Also, the hint that on top of Priestess's head is the Manoleum necklace that Ishizu wears in the anime. Next up is Gravekeeper's Visionary. Uh, hold on one second. I give you some back on Gravekeeper's Visionary. Gravekeeper's Visionary, whose name in the OCG is Gravekeeper's High Priest. This monster's effect reads: you can tribute summon this card by tributing one Gravekeeper monster. This card gains 200 attack for each Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard. If this face-up card would be destroyed, you can discard one Gravekeeper monster instead. Gravekeeper's Recruiter, known in the OCG as Gravekeeper's Summoner. If this card you control is sent to the graveyard, you can add one Gravekeeper monster with 15 or less defense from your deck to your hand. Gravekeeper Recruiter is basically a play on Witch of the Black Forest, where it is able to search for a particular monster with 15 or less defense and add it from your deck to your hand. Also to note, Gravekeeper Recruiter is also one of the monsters based on Odeon. Yes, Odeon from the Yu-Gi-Oh! DX, from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Original series, which which he himself was an resemblance to the Gravekeepers themselves, and acted as more of an older sibling to Ishizu and Merrick, as well as a bodyguard to Merrick as well. Next up, Gravekeeper's Nobleman, known in the LCG as Gravekeeper's Disciple. When this card you control is destroyed by battle with an opponent's attacking monster and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon one Gravekeeper monster from your deck and face down defense position, except for Gravekeeper's Nobleman. Gravekeeper's Ambusher. When this card is flipped face up, you can target one card your opponent controls and place that target on the bottom of their deck. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard after being flipped face up, you can target one NecroValley card in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. This card's effect is unaffected by NecroValley. Then we have Gravekeeper's Heretic. This card on the field is unaffected by all other card effects as long as NecroValley is on the field. This monster gives a bit of resemblance to Thief King Bakura, for they have a similar hairstyle connecting the two. Then we have Gravekeeper's Shaman. This card gains 200 defense for each Gravekeeper monster in the graveyard. Negate all monster effects that activate in the graveyard except for Gravekeeper monsters. While NecroValley is on the field, your opponent cannot activate field spells, and also field spells cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. She is a multitude of monsters. She has a multitude of effects to deal with the graveyard in protecting NecroValley. A fun fact about her is that some say she is based off of Ishizu and Merrick's mother from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Original series. She's also an inverse to Gravekeeper's Visionary, where while Visionary gained 200 attack for each monster in the graveyard, she's gaining 200 defense for every Gravekeeper monster in the graveyard. Gravekeeper's Oracle, known in the OCG as Gravekeeper Shakim. This monster's effect reads: you can tribute 3 monsters or 1 Gravekeeper monster to tribute summon, but not set this card. When this card is tribute summoned, you can activate any of these effects and resolve them in sequence up to the number of Gravekeeper monsters tributed for its tribute summon. If it was 1 or more, this card gains attack equal to the combined level of all monsters tributed for the tribute summon of this card times on field times 100. Destroy all set spells and trap cards your opponent controls, and all monsters your opponent controls currently lose 2,000 attack and defense. The artwork and the look of this monster, of course, is resemblance to Gravekeeper's Descendant, for the fact that this is Gravekeeper's Descendant older up in age. You also prints to Gravekeeper's Visionary, for this monster is also sitting in the chair in which Visionary originally sits in, and they are all holding the same staff. This means that Gravekeeper's Descendant took over in control of the clan, and now he sits on the throne in which Gravekeeper's Visionary had. Could be that Gravekeeper's Visionary is the father of Gravekeeper's Descendant, and now he has moved up to running the family in terms of watching over the thrones. Gravekeeper's Spiritualist. Now, this is your main phase. If NecroValley is on the field, you can fusion summon one spellcaster type fusion monster from your extra deck. Using this card you control and other monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. You only use this effect of Gravekeeper Spiritualist once per turn. She is one of the only Gravekeeper cards to ever have the ability to use Fusion Summon without using Polymerization or any other sort of fusion card. Next up and last of the main deck Gravekeeper monsters, Gravekeepers Headsman, known in the LCG as Gravekeepers. Um, any LCG, give me a minute. Gravekeepers Headman. Oh, Gravekeepers Priest. When this card is summoned, you can target one level 4 Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard. So summon in face up or face down defense, face up attack position or face down defense position. You can only use this effect of Gravekeepers Headsman once per turn. This monster is also unaffected. This effect is unaffected by NecroValley. And fun fact, the image of this card is actually in the face of a woman. The alteration to this monster's name is only due to its association of spiritualism, as a priest or priestess is a spiritual figure, which is also weird because we have a Gravekeeper's priestess, but we had to align the Gravekeeper's headsman. Now we move on to the extra deck, and we have Gravekeeper's Supernaturalist, known in the LCG as Gravekeeper's Esper. Requires 2 spellcaster type monsters. This card gains attack and defense equal to the combined original level of all the materials used for its fusion summon times 100. When NecroValley is on the field, this card and any card in your field spell zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. During your main phase, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add 1 Gravekeeper monster or 1 NecroValley card from your deck to your hand. You only use the effect of Gravekeeper Supernaturalist once per turn. This monster is, of course, an upgraded version of Gravekeeper Spiritualist, for the fact that this monster is basically that monster, just older. This also means that this monster, in turn, is the highest leveled and highest statted Gravekeeper monster on its base. This monster, of course, is the only and currently the only extra deck monster for the archetype, and has a good portion of effects that helps not only support NecroValley, but also support Gravekeepers themselves. Move on to some more supporting cards. We have the Charm of Shabbat. This card's effect reads: during either player's turn, you can discard this card until the end phase of the turn. Gravekeeper monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. Cat of Ill Omen, known in the LCG as a black cat of ill omen. Flip target 1 trap card and place it on top of your deck. Or if NecroValley is on the field, you can add that trap card to your hand. An Owl of Luck, flip target 1 one field spell card in your deck and add it to the top of your deck. If NecroValley is on the field, you can add the selected field spell to your hand instead. Both of these monsters have hieroglyphics and have images of NecroValley in their background, as you can, as in reference. In reference, the Cat of Ill Omen is based off of a black cat, which is associated with ancient Egyptian history, as cats were worshipped not only as pets but as deities to the Egyptian clans and to those who lived in ancient Egypt, as a bit of a sign that the cats were royalty in many cases. The Owl of Luck itself is based on folklore and tales in ancient Egypt about the owls themselves, giving luck to those who ever seen it. Then we've already talked about Night Assailant. We can now move on to the spells. NecroValley, known in the LCG as Where the Royal Family Rest. NecroValley also has another translation of Where the Royal Family Sleeps. NecroValley. All Gravekeeper monsters on the field gain 500 attack and defense. Cards in your graveyard cannot be banished. Negate any cards effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. Negate any card effects that change the type or attribute in the graveyard. NecroValley itself has been one of the most strange field spells in Yu-Gi-Oh history, for it has the most reprints and the most rewordings than any other card for any field spell card in the game. This is due to the fact that NecroValley's ability to shut down the graveyard and make sure that nothing comes out the graveyard or affects the graveyard. It's one of the rare cases as well because its card has so many different erratas on it that it's not even funny. And it's kind of ironic how NecroValley overall is one of the most strongest and most recurrently played field spells that has ever prints. Not because of its own effects, it's just because of how generic it is. There's been multiple archetypes and decks that take advantage of NecroValley and its ability to shut down the grave. Meaning that so many other cards would have to play different strategies in order to play around NecroValley if they did survive to use the graveyard. The Gravekeeper's Servant, known in the OCG as the Gravekeepers, known in the OCG as Gravekeepers. I guess I just had this card. Gravekeeper's Familiar. Your opponent must send one card from the top of their deck to the graveyard to declare an attack. This is the only card in the Gravekeeper archetype that does not feature the field spell NecroValley. Does not contain any of the Gravekeeper monsters. And it was one of the first of the Gravekeeper cards, and still is associated with the archetype despite the fact that its image has nothing to do with the archetype itself. It does incorporate the graveyard. For that, this card forces your opponent to send a card to the graveyard from their deck in order for their monsters to attack. Royal Tribute. If you control NecroValley, both players discard any monsters in their hands. This is the only card associated with NecroValley that does not have a way to be searched out from any of the Gravekeeper or NecroValley support cards. This card itself actually was limited in the TCG and OCG until a couple of years ago, where this card was removed from the list because it was just too. It only relied on removing monsters and still needed its field spell in order for it to activate and trigger its ability. Gravekeepers Stelling, now in the OCG, as Gravekeepers Lithograph. Select target two Gravekeeper monsters in your graveyard. Add those targets to your hand. This card's effect cannot be negated by NecroValley. This card features in its artwork the Gravekeeper's Descendant, who is reading one of the high lithographs in deciphering its text. Hidden Tombs of NecroValley. Hidden Temples of NecroValley, known in the OCG as Shrines of NecroValley. This card's effect is you can activate if both a Gravekeeper monster and NecroValley are on the field. Neither player can touch the summon monsters except Gravekeeper monsters. If either a Gravekeeper monster or NecroValley is not on the field, destroy this card. Then we have Gravekeeper. We have NecroValley's Throne. Activate one of the following effects. Add one Gravekeeper monster from your deck to your hand. Immediately after this card's effect resolves, normal summon one Gravekeeper monster. You can only activate one NecroValley's Throne once per turn. Then we move on to the all the trap cards. We have Imperial Tombs of NecroValley, known in the OCG as Royal Tombs of NecroValley. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, while both a Gravekeeper monster and NecroValley are on the field, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only activate one Imperial Tombs of NecroValley once per turn. NecroValley Temple. When this card is active, while you control a Gravekeeper monster, or monsters in NecroValley are on the field, both players, your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense. Once a turn during your main phase, while you control no field spell card, you can activate one NecroValley directly from your hand or graveyard. If this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can set one NecroValley spell or trap card directly from your deck, except NecroValley Tunes. Temple. Sorry, not Tunes. Temple. Of course, in this card artwork features the shrine itself that is worshipped by the Gravekeepers. And the last card is Rite of Spirit, known in the OCG as Necromancy Ritual. When Target one Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. This card's activation and its effects are unaffected by NecroValley. In this card's artwork, this card features Gravekeeper's Chief, Gravekeeper's Guard, and Gravekeeper's Assailant. So, that is it basically for all the cards that featured around NecroValley and the Gravekeeper archetype. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys learned a bit about the Gravekeepers themselves. So, while we wrap up the video, I just want to give a shout out to all of the followers that have been following the channel, as well as many of those who have helped support the channel itself. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you guys can be informed of when I do upload more content. As well, there are social media links in the description box below so you guys can interact with me via social media. There's also the Patreon if you guys want to help the channel out and give a little in respect to help the channel. And that's all up to you. So, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. HPJ, signing out. Take care.